Hey everyone, Sam Ovens here, and welcome to this training in the Consulting Accelerator program, week 2, and this one is called Duality and the Conflict of Man. So don't worry if this title sounds a little bit strange or you don't know what it means, because pretty much like everything in week 2, you won't understand what these names are, and you won't understand this concept until you've gone through the video. But I'm sure if you've gone through the first 2 videos, you've noticed the profound changes and everything that have started to happen by going through them. So you definitely want to go through this one, and this one is seriously powerful. And once you understand this, you'll be able to make massive transformations to yourself, to your life, to your financial state, to pretty much everything. Once you learn this, you pretty much will be able to take control of anything in your life. And so this is a really important one. And so here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover what is the duality and conflict of man, and why is it important. And then we're going to go into how your mind works and how you make decisions. So if you've ever wanted to know how your brain actually works, no one has really been able to tell us how our brain works. Why do you just have random thoughts that just pop into your brain? Why are you scared of doing some things, but some things are totally easy for you to do? And why do we have emotions about certain things? Why are we afraid to do stuff? Why are we excited to do stuff? I mean, everyone's quite different, and somebody's fears are often another person's favorite thing to do. But somebody's favorite thing to do is often somebody else's biggest fear. And so it's quite amazing how this all happens. And I'm sure you've wondered, how does your brain actually work? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. And you're going to be able to understand this, and then you're going to be able to, understand why things are the way they are for you and, your life, and why things are the way they are for other people and their lives. And be able to consciously be aware of all of this stuff and be able to change it for yourself and help other people change it too if they want to. And the division of opposites in the 2 poles of nature. So in the world, we have 2 poles on the world. We have the North Pole and the South Pole. And a magnet, has a pole. They have poles too. It's like the positive and the negative force. Same with a battery. There's a positive and a negative. And with pretty much everything in the world, everything in the observable universe, it's got poles like night and day, darkness and light, hot and cold. There's all of these, everything in the observable universe has an opposite. And we call these the 2 poles of nature. And I'm going to explain those to you and how it's really important to understand. And then, who are you? The definitive answer and a summation of mental programming. So I'm going to show you how you have defined who you are. I'm going to show you how you've formed your identity. This person who you think you are right now, this self which you have defined, and this identity and this ID that you're currently walking through the world with. I'm going to show you how that was put there, and I'm going to show you who you are and how that was created. And most importantly, I'm going to show you how to change it, which is massively powerful. And then I'm going to discuss society's conflict of opposites and perceived right and wrong. So, I'm sure you've noticed that there's a lot of conflict, within groups, within yourself. You might want to do something, but, you've got internal conflict. But one side of you says you should do it, the other side says you shouldn't, and, you're internally conflicted. And then groups have that. There's one person that wants to do things differently and everyone else wants to do something else. There's conflict. And within society, there's conflicts too. There's different races, there's different religions, there's different classes. People, the people who are poor say that the rich shouldn't be rich, And, there's all this conflict. It's all of these different sides kind of facing off. And it's gotten quite bad right now. And, I want to explain how that all happens and exactly, how that was created and how we can change that and everything. And then mankind's big question. So this is the big question that civilization has tried to answer forever. And, it's the big question which everyone is trying to find, like, right now. And, I'm going to show you what mankind's big question is, and then I'm going to answer it. So this is a really, really, really important video, probably one of the most important in week 2 of the New Paradigm and Worldview training. So you definitely want to watch this right through to the end. We've got some action items in this module as well, so I'm going to show you what those are and how to complete them. It's going to be a really transformative training module, this one. So you definitely want to pay close attention and, and you want to complete these action items at the end too. So what is the duality and the conflict of man? Well, the duality is our mind's way of understanding things. It's how we think. It's like you want to kind of picture your mind as like a computer, and it's got this programming in it. And it's like it's got the special way of it's got the special software in it that understands things a certain way. And this is how we think. The duality is how we think. And what I want to do right now is to do something fun, just a little exercise. So I want you to pay close attention, and I'm going to show you some different things. So I'm going to show you some pictures of things, and what I want you to do is feel the emotions in your body and just pay close attention to the thoughts that pop into your head as I show you each picture. Don't try and think too hard about this or anything. Just relax, and the first sort of emotion or feeling or thought that comes into your head, just pay attention to that and notice what it is as I run through these different pictures. So let's go. So Donald Trump, what do you feel? What do you think? Hillary Clinton, what do you feel? What do you think? The devil. Jesus. A billionaire smoking a cigar on Wall Street with a burning $100 bill. A girl in California meditating and being spiritual. An American family in the middle of America with a whole bunch of guns. Some are Muslims. Some lettuce and vegetables and some healthy food. A greasy burger with tons of fat and cheese in it. Here's a gangster rapper with 2 guns. And here's Taylor Swift. Now here is Gordon Gekko, the guy from Wall Street who says greed is good. Here he is smoking a cigar and making lots of money and drinking a scotch. So here's a rich billionaire dude smoking a cigar. And here is some poverty, here's some poor kids. So what did you experience? When I showed you all of those different images, what feeling did you get inside your body, or what emotion, or what thoughts popped into mind? You see, the only way the human brain can understand something is to compare it to something else or to compare it to an opposite. And without darkness, there can be no light. Like, I don't think anyone ever stops to understand this, but just try to imagine if we just had light without any darkness. Like if it was just permanently daytime without any night. We wouldn't know what light was. And if there was no light, then we wouldn't know what dark was. Just try to think about that for a moment. Without darkness, there really can be no light, and without light, there can be no darkness. And without on, there can be no off, and without off, there can be no on. And without healthy, there can be no unhealthy. If we remove unhealthy, then we don't even know that we're healthy. And the only way the human brain can understand something is to compare it to an opposite. And if you don't believe me, if I was to tell you right now that in my office it's 456 purple monkey degrees, so is it hot or cold? Tell me right now, is that a hot temperature or a cold temperature? Well, you see, you just don't know, because purple monkey degrees is, you don't know what sort of scale that temperature operates on. And it's impossible for you to find out because I just made it up. And so the first thing your mind tries to do is try and compare 456 purple monkey degrees to the temperature system that you understand. So if you understand degrees Celsius, or if you understand degrees Fahrenheit, then you're going to want to compare it to that. You need to have a comparison in order to understand. And could you buy an iPhone with 38,769 rupees? So without using a currency converter, without Googling it, could you buy one or not? You just don't know unless you understand rupees. But the first thing your brain's going to do is try and compare rupees to your currency. You're going to try and compare it to US dollars, to Australian dollars, to GBP, to pounds. We don't know we don't know rupees, so we don't know if we can buy an iPhone with it. We have to make a comparison. And this is my point. The human mind can't understand something without comparing it to something else, or without comparing it to an opposite. And this is the human mind. And it can't comprehend something without comparing it to something else. And this division of opposites is called duality, or dualism. And now what I'm going to show you is how your mind works and how you make decisions. So I've shown you this duality and how we need to compare things. But now I'm going to show you how your mind actually works and how you make decisions. So as you're walking through life, and you're confronted with a situation where you have to make a decision and you have to decide something, I'm going to show you how your brain works here. So first of all, a couple of questions. Just say out loud, as I go through each one of these, what you think the answer is. So what do you use to see things? What do you use to hear things? And what do you use to touch things? And what do you use to smell things? And then what do you use to taste things? And if you think it's these things, well, you're wrong. If you said, touch, we use our hands. If to hear, we use our ears. To see, we use our eyes. To taste, we use our tongue or our mouth. And to smell, we use our nose. Well, it's actually the wrong answer. And you see, this is the human mind. And what people don't understand is that we don't actually see and smell and hear and taste and do all of that with those body parts. All of those parts do is just take in information, and then the information is processed in the brain. And when it's processed in the brain, we form perception. And perception is our experience. It's actually what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. All of that is perception. What we do is we take in information, and we use the eyes and everything to do that. But where it's actually turned into an experience is all in the brain. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And everything we experience is the perception of information. And all perception is carried out in the brain. And this can actually come from two places. It can come from your environment. So as you go around, you can walk around outside, or you can read a book or whatever, and you're going to be taking in information from your environment. You're going to be seeing things, smelling things, touching things, hearing things. That's one way to take in information. And people believe that the only way to take in information is from the environment, but there's another way to take in information, and that's through your memory and your imagination. So if your memory is when you're recalling something from the past, if you're thinking back to, into past time where, you of an experience or a memory there, that is another way of perceiving things. Another way is your imagination, so thinking into the future or thinking of new things. So there's two ways we can take in information, from our memory and from our environment. And both of these will create perception. And here's what nobody can understand. The mind doesn't know the difference between something that happened in real life and something that happened in the imagination. And this, that might sound a little bit strange to you right now, but seriously, this is actually what happens. So, we come to believe that our brain only understands real life. Like, we walk around, we see something happen for real, like we see it really happen, and then that's going to go into our brain, and that's going to form the belief. But really, we can also feed the brain from our memory and imagination. So if we replay a memory of the past, the brain's going to just treat that like it happened in real life. And we can feed the mind information from memory, imagination, and the environment. So we can feed it of thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, or thoughts of right now as we, walk around outside. And what we don't understand, what we don't get, is that the brain treats everything the same way. It doesn't know the difference. And I'll prove it with something very simple here. So have you ever thought of a painful memory and experienced the exact same emotions and feelings in your body as if it happened again? Like, have you done something embarrassing in the past? I'm sure everyone has. Everyone's done something embarrassing. So think of something you've done that's embarrassing in the past, and then, just replay that movie right now in your mind about that thing you did. And, then what happens is you start to feel the emotions. You start to feel embarrassed and anxious. Sometimes your face might go red, or, you literally start to feel sick or full of worry again. And what's crazy is that, when we replay this memory of the past, our body experiences the exact same emotions and feelings as if it happened again in real life. And so this should be some sort of evidence to you that your mind doesn't know the difference. If your brain did know the difference between something that happened right now in real life and something that happened in the past and through imagination and memory, then it wouldn't let those emotions run through your body, but it does. And so, we come to believe that our mind only, takes in information through our eyes and through our ears and through our nose and everything, but that can't be true if we can replay something in our memory and no information is feeding through our eyes, no information is feeding through our ears, or through our mouth or anything. I mean, there is no information feeding from, through these pieces on our body. However, we can feel these same emotions all over again as if it happened. So that is, evidence that the mind doesn't know the difference. It really does not know the difference between something that happened in real life from experiencing an environment and something which happens in your mind through imagination or a memory of the past. And this sort of stuff happens all the time. I'm sure you can tell for yourself, and I'm sure you can tell for others. As I tell you this, this happens all the time. What we're talking about here isn't even rare. So one person tells somebody one time, "You're dumb," or you can't do that. And then that person replays that movie again and again and again in their imagination, and they do it until they cement a belief deep in their brain, and that then becomes, really, really strong. So I'll give you an example with me. One time, a teacher told me I was dumb at times tables, and this was back at school. It was primary school, and I was, just a little kid. And the teacher told me I was dumb at times tables, and so then I thought, oh, well, the teacher should know, so I must be dumb at times tables. So then, this experience only happened one time. However, I replayed that movie again and again in my mind. That day, I just couldn't get it out of my head. I just kept playing it like, I'm dumb at times tables. I just kept playing it. Each time I played it, I felt those emotions of embarrassment again. And I just kept playing it and kept playing it. And I kept playing it for years. And what happened is I truly started to believe that I was dumb at times tables. And, this became my entire belief of everything. I thought I couldn't do maths. I couldn't do math. And so throughout the rest of school, throughout the rest of college, and pretty much throughout the rest of my life, I thought I couldn't do math. So whenever I came across math, I just thought I couldn't do it, and I would fail it all the time. And it became really, really hard for me to do. And you see, this is what people do. This is what happens to everybody. One person will tell them something one time, which doesn't mean anything, and they might tell them they can't do something, or they are this, or they aren't that, and then that person, if it catches on, they'll replay it again and again and again in their mind until it cements a belief deep in their brain. And they've actually done, they've done tests and experiments on people. So they had somebody, and they had a hot coal, like a heated up hot coal. It was like red hot, piping hot. And the person was standing blindfolded, and they kind of held the coal up next to their back. They didn't push it onto his skin. They just held it there, kind of a few inches away. And they said, okay, well, I'm holding a hot coal behind your back right now. Can you feel that heat there? And the person was like, yes, I can feel it. And they're like, can you feel it getting closer now? And the person was like, yes. And they're like, can you feel it getting further away? And the person was like, yes. And so, they were holding this hot coal there. And then what they did is they moved the hot coal down. Then they got a cube of ice. And then they kind of moved the hot coal closer to his skin, closer, almost touching. And then they swapped it out with the cube of ice and pushed that against his back. And, the dude thought that he had just had a hot coal pushed against his back, as anyone would, and just totally freaked out, went into panic. And in his mind, he thought the hot coal was on his back and that it was burning him. And what really blew me away is that it wasn't just what he thought, but his back, his skin started to blister. So the body actually was reacting to it, and it blistered up, and as if it was getting burnt by a hot coal. And this really proved it for me. I mean, not only did this happen in the mind, not only was it an emotional reaction and a mental reaction, his experience was as if it was happening, but the body, the physical body, reacted as well. And that there for me was proof that, the mind doesn't know the difference between something that happened in real life and something that happened in the imagination. And this is what happens. One person will tell someone one thing one time, and if they truly believe it, or if they keep replaying that memory again and again and really get to them, then they're going to cement a belief deep in their brain that actually is the truth and that actually happened. And one thing said one time becomes somebody's belief of reality. Just as easy as that. And here's how your mind forms beliefs. So I've told you about the duality and how that works, and I've showed you how your brain works through information and perception, and how all perception is actually carried out by the brain. Now I'm going to show you how you form beliefs. So right now right now as a person and in your brain, you hold beliefs about a ton of things. What's right, what's wrong, what's true and what's false, all sorts of things you will hold beliefs about. So now I'm going to show you how your mind actually forms beliefs, how they got there, how they became the way they are, and how you can change them. So you want to think of your mind like this. You want to think of it as a set of scales. And there's two sides of the scales, the left side and the right side. And you want to think of one as positive experiences and the other as negative experiences. And what your mind has is, it's got tons of different scales in it. And basically, for each thing that you experience, you form a belief using positive or negative experiences. And what happens is you put rocks on these. So the best way to describe this is, imagine that you've got this belief that you're bad at times tables, like I did when I was at school. So the subject, or this topic which we're talking about, is called times tables or mathematics. And because my teacher told me I was bad at times tables, I put rocks on this negative experience. I thought times tables, teacher told me that I was bad at it. I felt embarrassed. It was the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me. Kids laughed at me. So, we stack a negative rock on this side. But what happens is that, if we have a positive experience with something, like if we did times tables and we got the best in the class at that, then we might think, whoa, I'm really good at times tables. And then we're going to put a rock on the positive side of these scales. And so the name of these scales in your mind is called times tables. And depending on positive or negative experiences, we put a rock there. And we have a different scale for everything, maths, spelling, history, everything, like all the different subjects, and then all of everything else in the world, like whether we like sushi, whether we like pad thai, whether we like steak, whether we're a vegetarian or not, all of these different things. We've just got different scales in our mind, and we just stack rocks on either side, depending if they are negative experiences or positive experiences. And what no one understands is that we can put rocks on these scales, not just through experiences of real life, like when the teacher actually told me you're bad at times tables. We can actually put rocks on these scales through our imagination and through our memories of the past. So one teacher only told me that I was bad at times tables one time. So that experience in real life only happened once. However, I put that in my memory and I just replayed it again and again and again and again. I just couldn't stop replaying that mental movie. And so throughout the rest of that day, I played that negative movie. And then pretty much for the rest of my life, I replayed that negative movie. And I replayed it so many times that I placed thousands of negative rocks, or I placed thousands of rocks on the negative side of the scale for times tables. And so what do you think happened? Every time I came across maths or times tables or anything with numbers, really, for the rest of my life, I just thought, I can't do this, or there's no way I can do this. And that is what happens. And what no one can understand is that, we place rocks every time we think about something, not just when we experience it. And this is a huge, huge thing to understand because, I think a lot of people think that their mind only builds belief about experiences that happened in real life. But your mind forms beliefs more about what happens throughout its imagination. Because each time you play a mental movie, whether it's into the future, whether it's from the past, you're adding more rocks to whatever side, negative or positive, and you're heavily influencing and creating your own beliefs. And your mind is an on-off system programmed by environment, memory, and imagination. So thinking of the past, and then imagination of what could happen in the future, and then your environment, which is, what you're experiencing right now. And whatever way you stack the scales for each thing, like for times tables, for spelling, for whatever way you stack the scales, it will become your belief. Just like whenever I came across times tables, I thought, I can't do that, there's no I can do that. Well, that's because I'd stacked the scales that way. And so whatever way you've stacked your scales, that will become your belief. So all the beliefs you have right now, things that you can't do, things that you can do, things that you're bad at, and things that you're really good at, and your belief about everything, what's right, what's wrong, who you are as a person, everything, like your beliefs about everything, you've just basically stacked your mental scales that particular way. And whatever way you stack the scales, it will become your belief. And then, whatever your beliefs are, it will become your reality. So, your beliefs become your reality. Nobody understands this either. Because, when my teacher told me that times tables, that I was bad at times tables, that formed my belief because I played it over and over and over and over again in my mind. And when I did that in my mind so many times, whenever I came across times tables again, I said I couldn't do it. And if someone made me do it, like if it was a mandatory thing I had to do, I always stuffed it up and I always failed it. So my belief became my reality. And I really did think that I was bad at times tables and I was bad at maths. And every teacher thought I was. If you asked anyone who knew me throughout school and everything, they'd be like, Sam's bad at maths. It's because my belief became my reality. Whatever way you stack the scales will be your belief, and whatever your belief is, it will become your reality. And this is why I showed you images that draw strong responses. So how have you stacked these scales? How do you feel with the picture of Trump like that? And how do you feel of the picture of Hillary like that? And why I showed you these images is because, these are ones which people generally stack quite heavily. It'll draw strong responses, strong emotional responses, like outrage or shock, and, all of these things, because these are, things that right now in society and everything, there's a lot of things associated with each one of these different images. And so how have you stacked these scales? How do you feel about each one? Well, the way that exists for you, why your belief is that way, why you feel that way, is because you have stacked the scales that way in your mind. And not just through experiences in the real life, through experiences which you've had about thoughts of the past and thoughts of the future, and how many times you've played that mental movie over and over again in your brain. That's how you've stacked the scales. And this is how your mind works. It really is. And, it should be obvious to you because everyone's got different opinions and different beliefs and thoughts on this one. Like, some people, if you show them Trump, they'd be like, that's my hero, that guy's the best person in the world, that guy's going to save everyone. And someone, would think that was the precise opposite. And same if I showed, an image of Hillary, they'd think that woman is going to save the world. She's going to do everything right, which we need. And, depending on which one you have, that is just the way that you have stacked the scales. And that's why I showed you all of those different images. And I use those particular images because they elicit very strong responses. And this is really how your mind works. And now what I want to show you is this division of opposites and the two poles of nature. So I told you that, the world, it has two poles. We've got the North Pole and the South Pole. And, throughout nature, throughout everything in the perceivable universe, there are poles. There is, duality and dualism. There is a positive and a negative. That is the way everything is. That's the only way our mind can understand something. So let's talk about this division of opposites and the two poles of nature. So like I've said, the only way our mind can experience something is to have an opposite. And so here is the division of opposites and the two poles of nature. Now, there is tons of them. This is by no means all of them. But, here is just some of the big ones so that you can understand this right now. So, we've got the North Pole and we've got the South Pole. And just like on a compass, you've got north and south, and then you've got east and west, right? Like everything has its opposite. And then we have, with time, we have past and future. We've got thinking back, well, that's, what happened back then, that's history, that's the past. And then we've got the future, and, that's like imagination and what's going to happen in the future. So the opposite of past is future. And then the opposite of positive is negative. And just like on a battery, positive and negative. And then the opposite of darkness is light. And the opposite of light is darkness. And then, in the world, we've got days and nights. We have the daytime and then we have the nighttime. And then we have hot and cold. They're the opposites. On and off. Then we have good and evil. And then we have right and wrong. And then we have sad and happy. And then we have failure and success. And then we have beautiful and ugly, smart and dumb, fat and skinny. There is, for everything we've got, there is an opposite. Healthy, unhealthy. It doesn't matter what thing it is. You can think of anything and it'll have an opposite, because it's the only way our mind can understand something. And so try to think of some right now on your own. You can just pause this video for a second and just try and think of a few. Like think of some things and then think about what their opposites would be. And everything in this perceivable universe must have an opposite, otherwise our mind cannot understand it. Just like I showed you in those examples before, when I asked you how hot or cold would it be if I told you it was 456 purple monkey degrees? Or could you buy an iPhone with this amount of rupees? You don't know. You need to be able to compare it to something. And so everything in the perceivable universe must have an opposite for us to comprehend. And now let's talk about you. We've talked about your mind, and we've talked about how your brain works, and we've talked about the duality, and then we've talked about the two poles of nature. But, now let's talk about you as a person. So, who are you? I'm sure this is a big question, which we all try to really figure out. Like, who are we? Who are you? And I'm going to show you the definitive answer to this. So we tend to believe that we are this person and that we're born this way, and then that's it. That's it. We've got to, just take what we've got. We've got to deal with it, and that's just the way things are, and we're just born with it. And we're just born that way, and then that's it. And we go through life asking the question, like, who am I? Like we're going through life, we're experiencing all of these different things, and we're like, who am I? Is this me, or is this not me? Are these people like me, or do I associate with this, or do I not associate with this? Am I for this? Am I against this? We go through life asking this question, who am I? But as we answer that question, we naturally define, who am I not? Because there is no way to define who I am without defining who I am not. It's just the very nature of it. And so we stack the scales. Just like we stack the scales with our beliefs about, how good we are at math, or how good we are at using computers, or how good we are with technology, or how good we are with anything, we stack the scales. And we do this with ourselves. So we go through life thinking, who am I, and then who am I not? As we experience different things, we pull some things closer and we reject other things. We're like, okay, well, I am this, and then I'm not this. But the problem is, with saying that you are something, then you're saying that you aren't something. Because there is no other way to do it. Like, if you are for something, then you're against something. If you're against something, then you're for something. That's just the way it works. And so we stack rocks on either side of the scales, and we form our belief about who we are, who we are as a person. And imagine your entire life, every single experience you've ever had. And then imagine every thought you've had of the past, so every time you've looked into your memory. And then imagine every imagination and every thought you've ever had about the future. And then imagine that you've stacked the scales for everything. Every time you've had an experience, every time that you've had a thought of the past, and every time that you've had a thought of the future. Literally every thought you have is stacking the scales, and literally every experience you have is stacking the scales. There is no other way to do it. You can't have a thought without stacking the scales, and you can't have an experience without stacking the scales. That is just how it works. And what basically happens is the summation of every scale you've ever stacked becomes your identity. So every single experience you've had, every thought of the past you've had, every thought of the future you've had, all of them throughout your entire life, the summation of all of these put together, just imagine them, there must be millions and millions, they're just all stacked one way or the other. Well, the sum of all of these things together becomes your identity. This becomes the person who you think you are. So who you think you are right now and who you think you are not right now is quite simply the summation of every scale you've ever stacked. This is your identity. And your beliefs become your reality. So the way you have formed your identity, who you are right now, that is the way you experience reality. It is your reality. And the tragic thing is that the world has come to believe that we are somebody and we're unable to change. So we come to believe that we are this person. The sense of self gets very strong and defined over time. And, we answer, who am I, so many times that it gets very strong. And then all of a sudden we think, okay, I am this. And, then when we are something, then we aren't able to do other things. So if we say we're not good at times tables, then we can't do anything to do with times tables. Or if we say we're dumb, well then we can't do anything that involves using our brain and trying to solve problems. And if we say we can't catch, then we're never going to be able to catch. If someone tries to throw us keys, well, we're going to fumble them and we're going to drop them. And this is the way it happens. If we don't like the hot, then we're never going to go anywhere where it's hot. And if somebody invites us to go where it's hot, we don't want to go there. And if we don't like the cold, well, we're going to avoid every place that's cold because we don't like the cold. And the tragic thing is that the whole world has come to believe that we are this person, and that the way we have stacked the scales, it forms our identity. And once we form this identity, we believe that we can't do anything else. We're kind of stuck, unable to change. And we have defined who I am when the real question is, who am I becoming? Because, you're not somebody and then that's it. Like, you're not born and then you're a someone and then that's it. And then you've just got to kind of deal with it and be yourself and all of this stuff. That's not it. Like, when Michael Jordan was born, he wasn't born with a basketball in his hands and able to be the best sports player in the world, the best basketball player in the world. That didn't happen. He had to become the best basketball player in the world. And actually, everyone, including his coaches and teammates and everything, thought that he shouldn't be a basketball player and told him to quit for a long time. So, we are not someone and then that's it. We are always becoming someone. And this program is going to show you how to become anything you want and let go of the self that you currently think you are. So the limitation of who you can become is the self and your identity, which you have defined as who you are right now. And the way you've defined that self and that identity is just by stacking the scales. you've had experiences in real life, you've had thoughts of the past, and you've had thoughts of the future, and every time you've had a thought of the past or a thought of the future, or you've experienced something in real life, you have stacked the scales. And the summation of all of those scales forms your identity forms your reality. And, this is who you are, and this is the way things are. And now let's talk about society. And let's talk about society's conflict of opposites and the perceived right and wrong. Because I'm sure you've noticed that in society there's always conflict, there's always things going on, there's always bad and good, there's always a lot of conflict. And just as you defined, who am I, and you came up with an answer to that, and this sort of forms your identity and this sense of self and this collection of beliefs that you have about everything, and it really became your reality. Well, just as you defined who am I, as a collective group, society has defined who are we. So, think about what society is. Society is just a collection of individuals, and as a collective group of those individuals, society has defined who are we as the group. But when defining who are we, society naturally defines who are we not, because there's no possible way to be somebody without not being somebody. And so, when we define who we are, we define who we aren't. And when we define who am I, we define who am I not. And this is what's happened with society. When we've defined and formed the sense of identity for society, who are we, we've naturally defined who are we not. And when we define what is right, we naturally define what is wrong. So in our minds, if we think that eating meat is wrong and eating vegetable, that means that eating vegetables is right. And if we think that eating vegetables is the only right, then we think of eating meat as wrong. And this is the way it happens. When we define a right and a wrong, when we define either a right or a wrong, we naturally define the opposite. And society has stacked the scales. And so this is, society, just like you and your brain and everything, it has all of these different scales in it. And these scales, instead of being like, do I like this or do I not like this, society has collectively said, who are we and who are we not? Are we like this or are we not like this? And the nature of saying that we are like this, we at the same time say we're not like this. That is just the way it happens. And so collectively, society has stacked the scales with rocks. And these rocks don't have to exist with just with real life. They can also happen from thoughts of the past and thoughts of the future. So just like you yourself form your beliefs by thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, and experiences right now, society does that too. And so society stacks scales as well, and it forms beliefs. And society stacks scales about what is right and what is wrong. And every time as an experience or a thought of the past or a thought of the future, it puts a rock on these scales and it forms a belief about something. And it comes up with all of these rights and wrongs. People should be doing this, people shouldn't be doing this, and, this is how it's all formed. And he who is not with me is against me. So, with society, it's like, if you're not like society, then you're against society. He who is not with me is against me, and he who is not like us is our enemy. Now, as a society, if someone isn't like us and coming to the party and standing with us and uniting with us, well, then they're our enemy. He who is not like us is our enemy. And imagine multiple generations, every collective experience, every collective thought of the past, every collective thought of the future. Imagine how much stuff that is. Well, society stacked the scales for everything. You can't have a thought of the future or a thought of the past or an experience right now without placing a rock on a scale. And as a collective group, multiple generations, you just imagine that. Well, that collective experience and thought of the past and thought of the future, well, it stacks the scales as a society. And the summation of every scale society ever stacked, this becomes its identity. So this becomes who society is and who it's not. And society's beliefs become its reality. Just like how I thought I was bad at times tables, and that was my actual reality. Like, someone couldn't tell me that I was just believing that, and I'd made it up, and I could change. I was like, no, trust me, I can't do times tables. You put some in front of me, I won't be able to do them. Like, I can't do times tables, and I can remember like 1,000,000 times I've tried them and I haven't been able to do them. That was my reality. Beliefs become reality. And not just as a person, but, as a society. Society's beliefs become its reality. And this is quite remarkable, and no one really understands this. And the tragic thing is that society has come to believe that it is something, and anything different is its enemy. And society is defined, who are we, when the real question is, who are we becoming? And this is the cause of all conflict. Not only as ourselves, like you yourself, you've defined this person who you are. Like, I am someone. And that means that you're going to be in a lot of conflict, because whenever something comes to you which isn't you, you're going to be like, oh, I can't do that, or it's going to freak you out. You're going to be scared, stressed, whatever, because that isn't you. And you can't do anything which isn't you. And so all conflict inside a person is caused by defining who we are. And then all conflict within society is, that comes about by our, by collectively defining who are we. And so this is the cause of all conflict, not only within ourselves, but within the entire world, within all society. And the real question is, who are we becoming? And this brings us to the big question. Mankind's big question, which it's been trying to answer forever and is still trying to answer today. And everyone is looking everywhere trying to find these answers. And so the real question is, like, what is right and what is wrong? If we can program these scales to kind of go, one way or the other and believe one thing or believe another thing, or be someone or, not be someone, like, what is right and what is wrong? And what is the right way and what is the wrong way to live? This is what the whole world's been trying to figure out. What's the right way to live and what's the wrong way to live? And, because we want to be right, we don't want to be wrong. And, this has been mankind's big question for forever, really. And here is the current state of how we are divided. As a society, this is pretty much how it sits right now. This is how the scales sit. So, we believe that, making money on Wall Street and being a billionaire and having all of this money, and, if there was a dude wearing a suit on Wall Street, walking around, smoking a cigar, burning $100 bills and, just throwing money around like it didn't mean anything, we'd think, wow, that guy is wrong. That's greed. That's bad. And, this is typically what we see. If someone's really wealthy and everything, everyone's like, shame on you. You shouldn't be like that. And then we believe that, it's right to be, meditating or being over in California on the beach and doing yoga and doing wellness stuff and, being real spiritual and wearing yoga pants and stuff. Right? This is kind of how we've divided it. We think if someone's in New York wearing a suit on Wall Street, making a ton of money, smoking cigars, that's wrong, and that really he should be over in California doing yoga and meditating. Right? This is how we've stacked it, right and wrong. And we believe that, being at the beach or being in nature, in the forest or going on hikes or something and relaxing, we believe that that's right, and we believe that being in a polluted city surrounded by noise and tons of people and flashing signs and everything, we believe that's wrong. And we believe that the past is, more accurate than, the future. And we believe that the past is more right than the future. And so, we've got, whenever things are changing, everyone's always trying to resist change. They're all looking back in the past all the time. And as a society, we're always looking in the past more than we're looking in the future, because we believe the past is the ultimate truth. We believe that the past definitely did happen. Like, everything that happened in the past, that is a fact. And every thought of the future, well, that's just some stuff that doesn't really matter. It's all about the past. And as people, ourselves, we look in the past more than we look in the future. So if we are to define who we are, we have to look in the past. We have to pull up all of the memories we've got about ourselves in the past to really define who we are. And so not only as individuals, but as an entire society and as a whole world, we tend to favor history over future and past over future. That's just how we've stacked it, right and wrong. One's more accurate than the other. And we've come to define, vegetables and eating healthy and everything like this, all these greens and all these organic things, as right, and wrong as eating big, greasy burgers, like full of cheese and meat and everything. And then we've come to define university and having a degree and being qualified as right, and being a dropout without any qualifications at all as being wrong. Don't listen to someone if they're not qualified. Show us your qualifications. What sort of certificates do you have? This is how we've come to define, right and wrong. And then happiness and unhappiness, or happiness and depression. So we come to think that, being happy and smiley, that's the right way, and being depressed and sad and crying, that's wrong. And then we've come to believe that science is more accurate and, everything than religion is. And so everyone's, looking at science and looking at what they're finding out about space and what they're finding out about, through all of these different experiments, science has been taken more right at this moment of time than religion. And here's charity and being a billionaire. Like, here's Gordon Gekko from the movie Wall Street, where he says greed is good. Here's Gordon Gekko, hair slicked back, wearing a suit, smoking a cigar, making billions of dollars, just caring about himself. And then, here's charity. And so we believe that giving money to charity and giving money to the poor is the right thing to do. And making a ton of money and being a billionaire and smoking cigars, well, that's the wrong thing to do. And, whenever there's a piece in the news about some billionaire, everyone's always like, oh, shame on you, you should be giving to charity. And, this is how it happens. And here's work and play. So, we believe that playing and, taking a vacation and taking a break is more right than working. We come to believe the people who are always on a break, they're always like looking at the people who are working all the time, and they're like, oh, you guys, you should really be coming out into nature and exploring things and, walking around, going outside more. Like, we currently believe that is more right than working. And what we've done is, we must choose a side. That's kind of, that's the way that our society and ourselves and everything has become divided. Everyone has kind of been brought up and educated and taught that you must choose a side. You have to, be for something and against something. You have to choose Hillary or Trump. You have to choose, something. I mean, we all think that it's right to be awake during the daytime, walking around while it's day, and asleep when it's nighttime. Like, that is the perceived right and wrong. If you're up all night and sleeping all day, well, you're doing something wrong. This is the way that we've been brought up and educated and programmed over time as individuals and as society, that we must choose a side. There must be a right and a wrong. And we have one perceived right and one perceived wrong. That's the way that we've been programmed. And this is the issue with society's current paradigm. So this is what causes all conflict within you as a person, within yourself, because you've got this person who you are right now, and then you desire to be someone else. You desire to be, a better, bigger version of yourself. But there's so much conflict internally because these two selves are at war. It's who you are right now is fighting who you want to become, and this causes all sorts of unhappiness, stress, fear, dissatisfaction, everything. And then in society, this happens too. When a society forms a very strong identity of who it is, then if anything isn't like that, then it's its enemy. And, it gets all upset because something isn't like it, and it must be wrong. And this is what happens with religions and everything. If something isn't for it, then it's against it. And this is the issue with society's current paradigm. And so here are the list of all the different things that I'm walking you through in this week 2 New Paradigm and Worldview training in this program. And we covered number 1, which was misunderstanding in the psychology of the self and creation of the identity. We already covered that in the first video. And if you haven't watched the first video or the second video, go back and watch those right now. This program's been designed to watch each video in order. And so number 2 is dualism and the perception of one right and one wrong. And so, this is what I'm going to show you right now. This is the issue with society right now. We've divided everything. We have a duality and a dualism. And we have a perception of one true right and one true wrong. We have this for ourselves. We have, this is me and this is not me. But then all of a sudden we want to become something bigger. And, that's when we have conflict. And as a society, we have who we are and then who we are not. And we have enemies and conflict. And this is all caused by dualism and duality and the perception of one right and one wrong. And so here is how things currently are. This is the problem with society's current way and current paradigm. So our mind is a programmable on-off system that divides thoughts, memories, and experiences into categories such as me or not me, right or wrong, for or against, good or evil, past or future, friend or enemy, true or false. And this division of opposites is the only way we can make sense of things, and it's called dualism or duality. And we grow up thinking, who am I? And every experience, memory, and thought stacks a rock on one side of the scales. Me, not me, right, wrong, good, bad. And over time, this sense of self and identity gets very strong and defined. And we define ourselves as a particular person, unable to change. And society develops the same way we do ourselves, except instead of as an individual, it develops as a collective group of individuals within it. And society develops over time thinking, who are we? Every experience, memory, and thought stacks a rock on one side of the scales, right or wrong, good or bad, like us, our enemy, and as a collective group, society develops a sense of identity and it's unable to change. And what we have to understand is this is the problem with the current paradigm that society has, most of the world has. And dualism is the cause of all conflict within you as a person. And dualism is the cause of all conflict within the world as a society. And so what is the answer? What is the answer to all of this? And this is what society's done wrong. And this is fascinating. So in trying to form an identity ourselves, as individuals, we somehow dream of being who our identity is not. And so, everyone kind of has this current self, who they are, and this desired self, but somehow who we desire to be isn't who we currently are. And so, we desire to become who we're not after a while. And then we're in conflict. So in trying to form an identity, we dream of being something which our identity isn't. And in trying to form an identity as a society, we end up creating an enemy as a society. And in trying to destroy depression with antidepressants, which is something which the whole world's doing right now, like in America, I read a statistic that's like more than 50% of America is on antidepressants. The answer to being sad these days is to go and get antidepressants, and then, okay, you're not going to be sad anymore. Well, in trying to destroy depression with antidepressants, we destroyed happiness through antidepressants. Because when you remove happiness, when you remove depression, you're going to remove happiness, and this is what we've done. And in trying to remove religion through science, we turned science into a religion. So, a lot of people came out and they were like, science is more accurate than religion. Religion is all of this, mumbo jumbo we don't listen to that at all because it's silliness. And we're going to look at science. Science is true. Science is fact. And what we've done over time is we've turned science into a religion. And it's amazing because if you look at the definition of religion, it's one source of truth, one universal source of truth which must be obeyed. And now what's amazing, in the past, if you spoke out against religion, everyone would shut you down. If you spoke out about religion, that was blasphemy. Well, now if you speak out about science, it's blasphemy. It's like that's anti-science, or if you're going against science. We've even got these sayings these days that he's anti-science. He's against science, or he doesn't believe in science. Well, in trying to remove religion through science, we turned science into a religion, and a lot of people think that I don't believe in religion. I'm an atheist, and I believe in science. Well, what they don't understand is that they actually believe a religion, because science has become a religion. And in trying to remove non-education through university, as a society we tried to educate everyone and make it all universal and everything. And in trying to remove non-education through university, we have come to introduce non-education through university, which is fascinating to see because now if you go to university, you end up coming out of it really not knowing anything. And this is what's happened. People go into university, they spend like $300,000 on a degree, and then they can't get a job. And so what we're finding these days is that people are coming out of university non-educated. And so the thing that was created to remove non-education is the thing that is now producing non-education. And in trying to forget money to achieve spiritual wellness and happiness, we see this a lot right now. It's a fascinating one to watch that I've been watching for a long time. We have this division between like New York and California. It's like, people who are on Wall Street in New York wearing suits and making millions and billions of dollars and smoking cigars, they're wrong. The way they're living life, it's not right. And the right way to live life is to be in California and to be peaceful and to be doing yoga and meditation and, be into wellness and all of this. But in trying to forget about money to achieve spiritual happiness, we end up unhappy because we need money. And this fascinates me to watch all of the time because, there's all of these people who I follow these people just to track all of this stuff and see what's going on with the world. But there's a lot of people who talk about, being peaceful and being spiritual and being happy and controlling your state and not letting anything affect you. But then they end up so unhappy and stressed out because they don't have any money or their car breaks down and they can't afford to fix it. And so then, they forget about something to be happy, but then they end up, being unhappy because they need that something. And then, I witnessed this happen as well with all of these people in California who became, who were to do yoga and meditation and everything and who were all about spirituality and happiness. And then as soon as Donald Trump became president, they became totally unhappy and stressed and panicking because of something else. And so, when we totally forget about one thing and we try and ignore it, and we obsess over the other, we end up creating the opposite. And this is what happens. Just like, in trying to remove non-education through university, we introduce non-education through university. It is just what happens when we take one thing to the extreme and we totally ignore the other. And people used to get a 9-to-5 job to have security. Everyone talks about job security and, you don't start a business. No, you don't do that. You get a job because you want security. Well, now, these days, having a job is the most insecure thing you can do. As an employee, you can get fired by anyone at any time for any reason, pretty much. Having a job is not what it used to be. People used to have jobs for like 40, 50 years. Now people don't have jobs for like 2 years. And so, what people used to do to have security is now the least secure thing. And people used to start a business to gain freedom and not have a job. However, this school of thought got out that when you start a business, the first thing you should do is go out and raise money and get all of these investors. And so that's what we've got over in Silicon Valley. We've got, all these kids who go out and they, the first thing they do before creating a product or before doing anything is they go out and they raise money. And so, people used to start businesses to gain freedom and not have a job, but now businesses who raise money have less freedom and more of a job than a job because they've got all of these investors breathing down their neck, asking what's going on, and they have to do things and they don't have control. So, most people who created a business to not have a job now have more of a job than they used to. And it really is because people have tried to completely remove one thing. Like, what would light be without darkness? Just try and imagine that for a moment. Imagine daytime without nighttime. If we totally removed nighttime, we just destroyed it, disintegrated it somehow, how would we know that it was daytime that we were actually experiencing? We need one to have the other. Like, what would light be without darkness? And what would hot be without cold? Try to imagine what hot is without cold. And try to imagine what nature would be without a city. And try to imagine what a city would be without nature. These two things don't exist without having an opposite. This is the only way the human brain can understand things. And this is the issue with society's current paradigm. And I've been sitting quietly watching this happen and waiting for the perfect moment. So I've been tracking this stuff for a long time. I've been following these different things, tracking them, looking at all of the markers, and waiting for the perfect moment to move on this one. And that moment is right now. And what's happened is the paradoxes have flipped. We call this a paradox when you try and do one thing and you take it to the extreme and then it becomes the other. It contradicts itself, and it's called a paradox. Well, I'm sure you've probably noticed some strange things that have been happening in society and everything recently. Well, what happened is the paradoxes just flipped out. They flipped over. And this is the dawn of the new era, and the consulting revolution is here. I've been waiting to introduce this until this perfect moment. And so what is the answer to mankind's big question? And it really is, the only way to be wrong is to choose a side. And so we've been taught and brought up, and it's been, the current paradigm is that you have to choose a side, and that there must be one right and there must be one wrong, and there must be ourself and there must be a not ourself. And really, the only way to be wrong is to choose a side, because we can't, if we create something and we say that is beautiful, at the same time that we create beauty, we create ugliness. And at the same time, if we create hot, well, we create cold. If we create cold, we create hot. And the only way to be wrong, really, is to choose a side. And everything in this universe is forever changing, moving, and evolving. That is for sure. And the only way to lose is to resist change. And do you remember the equation of all human evolution? So in the accelerator program in week 1, I showed you natural law and the equation. And I showed you this equation right here. And I showed you this is how everything in the perceivable universe evolves. This is the equation of all human evolution, all evolution of everything. And it looks like this. We have a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis. And basically, a thesis is like current situation right now, like you right now. And then an antithesis is something which comes in contact with the thesis. And so if you're the thesis, and then the sun is the antithesis, then the synthesis, which is what happens when these two combine, is that's going to be you, and you might be sunburnt because you interacted with the sun. Or you, and you might be tanned because you interacted with the sun. Or you, and you might be overheated because you interacted with the sun. And this becomes the new thesis. And this is really the governing equation of all evolution. And let's look at the evolution of yourself. I'm going to show you how this current paradigm we have as society is wrong, and then I'm going to introduce you this new way of thinking. So we have our current self. This is who we think we are. And this comes by defining, who am I? We're like, is this thing me? Is this not me? Are these people like me? Are they not like me? Am I for this? Am I against this? Do I believe in this thing? Do I not? And we create this self, this current self. And then naturally, as humans, it's totally natural to desire something else which is more than who we are. And that is our desired self. And so you've got who you are right now in this given moment, and then you've got who you want to be. You've got, this person who you want to be, and that might be, more wealthy, it might be more fit, it might be more tanned, it might be, you might have a six-pack, it might be whatever. Different people have different desired selves. So we've got the current self, and then we've got the desired self. And then we've got the gap between the two, which I've got in this grey box. And the gap between these two is the cause of all unhappiness. So, this division between the two inside ourself is the cause of all of our struggle, all of our conflict, and all of our unhappiness, because we want to become this other person, but we can't, because we've got our current self, and the person who we want to be is in conflict with who we currently are. And that's the cause of all unhappiness. And we have come to believe that this is the shitty truth of our existence. This is what we've come to believe as a society with our current paradigm, is that that's just the way it is. And, you've just got to take the card that you're dealt. And we've got all these sayings like, be yourself, be authentic, don't try to be somebody who you're not, don't try to be somebody else, stick to your roots, don't forget who you are, don't forget where you came from, all of these different things. And we believe that we really are a person and a self, and that we can't, that it's bad to desire stuff, and that all unhappiness is caused by desire and all of this. And we've come to believe that this is the shitty truth of our existence, but it's not. And remember how I showed you this? This is the equation for all evolution. And so we've got our current self, that's the thesis. Then we've got our desired self, that's the antithesis. And then we have our new self, and that's the synthesis. And, the new self is a combination of our old self and our desired self. And when we become our new self, that new self becomes, the current self again, and this equation repeats itself over and over again. That is why there is an arrow that goes from the pink back around to the blue, because, once we form the new self, it'll be natural that after a while we will start to desire a desired self again. And just like when I transformed myself into somebody who was broke into someone who made $100,000 a year, Well, I moved my desire to become someone who made 500,000 a year, and then I fulfilled that one. I did the synthesis, and I evolved, and then it was to become someone who made 1 million, and then it was all the way up. Now we made more than $20 million, and so it's never ending, and so we come to believe that we are this person and we are this self, and that we can't change, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, if you look at everything in the perceivable universe, it follows this equation, and this shows us that we can transform and evolve into whoever we want to be. And this is the new alchemy paradigm and worldview. And so I'm going to show you these different things, and I'm going to show you how the alchemy paradigm perceives these things, because right now they've gotten a bit out of control, I think. And so we believe that, if you're on Wall Street, smoking cigars with $100 bills and making billions of dollars, that's wrong, and that being over in California is right, doing meditation and everything. Well, the alchemy paradigm would combine the two. It would be a balance between the two. It would be being rich, but also being spiritual and doing meditation. So there's nothing wrong with doing spiritual stuff and meditation, but there's also nothing wrong with making a whole bunch of money and smoking cigars. It's the combination of the two, of spirit and money. And so we believe that the city is wrong, and being in the middle of the city is wrong, and that you should be out in nature. Well, it's city and nature. You'll find that the people, if you go out and you visit people who live in the country and in everything, they want to go to the city. And if you visit everyone that lives in the city, they want to go to nature and the beach. And this is what I've realized for myself, is I like both. I want to have a place in the middle of Manhattan, and I want to have a place in the middle of the Caribbean. And, I'm looking at buying a massive block of land right now, right on the water, and I'm going to have that in the next week. And, I'm going to build this retreat place called Atlantis, and that's going to be, I'm going to go between the two, because sometimes I want to be in nature and swimming around and at the beach and where it's all quiet and peaceful. And then other times I want to be right in the middle of it. And so, there is not really one right and wrong. The only wrong is really to choose one side and say the other is wrong. And it's a balance between the two. And we believe that the history is more right than the future, and that history has facts in it, and the future is just it's just up to imagination, and it's not true at all. Well, we perfectly value the history now and the future. So we look at right now, we look at history, and we look into the future, and we hold them all equally. We merge them all together. And we believe that, if eating healthy is right and eating burgers is wrong, well, we want to eat healthy and unhealthy. Because the truth is if you only eat healthy food, then your body actually forgets that it's eating healthy food. And I'm not joking at all. You can ask anyone who does anything to do with biology or science or anything. If someone tries to completely remove germs if they try and use hand sanitizer, and if they wash their hands like crazy and they're really scared of germs, well, guess what? They end up getting sick, because their immune system it hasn't built up tolerance. It doesn't have any germs. And so the second they meet a tiny little germ, it wipes them out. And this happens with people who eat healthy food. This is why in bodybuilding and stuff and in fitness, there's such a thing as a cheat day. It's like you want to eat well and everything, but every now and then it's good to binge out and just eat a whole bunch of KFC and burgers and thick shakes. It's because your body needs to be shocked back to understand that it actually had things good. Just like the people who live on the islands, they need to go to the city to understand that, okay, well, I like the city. Or, people who like the city and become immune to it, they need to go to the islands to understand that they like the city. This is the way it works. And so, we combine healthy and unhealthy. We want to eat both. We want, if we're all unhealthy, that's not good. If we're all healthy, that's not good either. And so we had university and college dropouts. We said college was wrong, and we said dropping out was wrong and going to college and being qualified is right. Well, what about education as a dropout? Why can't you drop out and be educated? And what's happening is people who drop out and educate themselves, they're way better educated than people who don't drop out and actually get what we call educated. And so we've got right and wrong. We're saying that it's right to be happy and it's wrong to be unhappy and sad and depressed. And so we've tried to abolish unhappiness with antidepressants, and in doing that we've pretty much abolished happiness. And so the right thing really is to combine the two and learn to enjoy struggle, learn to enjoy pain. I used to be afraid of everything, and then I became to actually quite enjoy the fear and the pain, because I didn't like being outside of my comfort zone, so I never went outside of my comfort zone, and I tried to completely abolish going outside of my comfort zone. But then I ended up totally unhappy because I was stuck in my comfort zone. And so, what we've really got to do is learn to enjoy the struggle. There's nothing better in the world when you enjoy a challenge, when you enjoy struggle, when you enjoy, some pain and some fear. There's nothing really better, because that is all part of being alive. You wouldn't know that you were happy unless you had been sad, and you wouldn't know that you were sad unless you had been happy. This is the way it works. And then we have, science, which we perceive to be the right and the source of all truth, and, religion, which is wrong. However, it's really spirituality and science. It's looking at both of them, not just one and ignoring the other. Because if we look at one and not the other, if we choose a side, that's when we really get it wrong. We have to have a balance. And so we've got work and play. We think it's right to be adventuring and playing, and we think it's wrong to be working all the time and behind a computer inside. Well, it's work as play. People are like, why don't you have a work-life balance or something? Well, and they're like, oh, you're living the wrong way because all you're doing is working. Well, what if living for someone was working? What if working for someone was the most satisfying thing that they could possibly do? A lot of people ask me that. They're like, oh, why aren't you out on the beach taking a vacation or something? I was like, I'd rather be working than on the beach. I'm helping tons of people and I'm having the time of my life doing this. It's like I'm painting the Sistine Chapel doing this thing. It's like it's like art for me, or making music. It is the most enjoyable thing that I could possibly do. And it is play for me. And so why can't we make work play and play work? Why do we have to divide them? And we have giving to charity as right, and then we've got being rich as wrong. And quite a lot of the time, a lot of people, I always talk about making money, because we've turned it into a taboo topic. As a society, we think we shouldn't talk about money. Someone's like, oh yeah, I made $1 million here, I made $1 million there, and the society looks at you like, what are you saying, man? You're not supposed to say anything like that. Don't talk about money. Money's bad. Don't talk about it. Money's evil. And if you do talk about it, everyone's like, oh, shame on you, or they're like, why aren't you giving to charity? Every Facebook ad I've ever run has about 1,000 people on it just saying, oh, shame on you, you should be giving to charity. And it's like, it's because we've got these binaries here. We've got this perceived right and wrong. And, with the new way of thinking, with the new alchemy paradigm and worldview, we combine these two and we think, well, what if we could get rich by giving back? I don't think a lot of these people look at the nature of my business in that I'm helping people make money. I'm helping people that, I'm helping a lot of people who would usually be the people who would receive charity. I'm helping them make money for themselves. And the very nature of my business is helping people. And how I get rich is by helping others get rich. And so, I really am getting rich by giving back. And so it's the combination of charity and getting rich. But we come to believe that, just because I'm making money or just because someone else is making money, that it's wrong and they should be giving that money to charity. But really, the division of making money and charity is the wrong, because we shouldn't have divided these two. The nature of making money is to add value. And generally, to add value, we must help people. And that's what a lot of people have just forgotten. They think that the only way to help people is to just give them some money. But if we give someone money, then they're going to want more, and they're never going to be able to fish for themselves. If you just give someone fish, then they can't do anything. Then they can only feed themselves for like one day. But if you teach them how, then they're good for life. And so getting rich by giving back. And, we've got our friend and our enemy. And we say, our friend is right, we should put our arm around our friend. But our enemy, we ignore the enemy. We should, hide from them. They're wrong. We should say bad things about them. Well, what about loving your enemy? What about making your enemy your best friend? And so the key to all evolution is variation. And when you start to grow tired of what is in the light, you must consider what is in the dark. And by this, I mean, we all have a light side and a dark side. Our current self is the self that we have chosen to put into the light. This is who we are. And the side of us that we are not is in the dark. And, this is how it works. So, when we grow tired of what's in the light, the only way we can really achieve our new self and our desired self is to consider what is in the dark. And you've got to remember this equation, the governing equation of really all evolution, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis, which becomes the new thesis. And so here's the issue with society's current paradigm and the way everybody thinks and believes. And it says, number 2, dualism and perception of one right and one wrong. So our mind is a programmable on-off system that divides thoughts, memories, experiences into categories such as me, not me, right, wrong, for, against, good, evil, past, future, friend, enemy, true, false, and this division of opposites is the only way we can make sense of things, and it's called dualism or duality. And we grow up thinking, who am I? From every experience, memory, and thought stacks a rock on one side of these scales. So we've got me and not me, right and wrong, good and bad. And over time, this sense of self and this identity gets very strong and defined. And we define ourselves as a particular person unable to change. And society develops the same way we do ourselves, because society is made up of individuals like ourselves. And so society develops the same way we do ourselves, except as a collective group of individuals within it. So society develops over time thinking, who are we? And every experience, memory, and thought stacks a rock on one side of the scales. Right, wrong, good, bad, like us, our enemy. And as a collective group, society develops a sense of identity, and they are unable to change. They get stagnant, and they don't want to change. And this is called dualism or duality. And dualism is the cause of all conflict within you as a person. You've got who you are and who you want to be, and that's the cause of all unhappiness. And then you've got dualism, and it is the cause of all conflict within the world as a society as well. Because once there is a well-formed society, there is its enemy. Because he who is not like us is against us, and he who is not with me is against me. He who is not like us is our enemy. And so becoming non-binary and balancing the poles, this is the new way of thinking. This is the new paradigm. So this is number 2, one of the new laws in the alchemy paradigm and worldview. So we must understand the nature of our own mind and the dualism experienced by the division of opposites. We must understand that all conflict within ourselves, society, business, and everywhere else exists through resistance to change. And we understand that the key to all evolution is a variation. And the thing that slows it down and causes problems is clinging to an identity built up from stories of the past. And we must let go of who we currently are to become who we want to be. And that involves doing things which we have ignored, judged, and victimized with our current self and its identity. And we understand that holding a firm side on anything while ignoring the opposite will require us to eventually face the opposite. If we take one to the extreme, then we flip over the paradox and we face the other, which is what all university and all science and all of these different things have done. They flipped the paradox. And this is why we must understand the dualism that exists in our mind and lose the binary stance of one true right and wrong and one true me and not me. And if you want to evolve as a person and grow into a better version of yourself in life and in business, you must consider the side of you that is hidden in the dark and bring it into the light. If you're an introvert, it's time to speak up. And if you're an extrovert, it's time to quietly reflect and be by yourself a little bit. If you've never been smart, well, it's time to become a genius. And if you've been anti-science and been against it and never looked at it and thought it's all bad, then, well, it's time to look at science. And if you've been anti-religion and never touched it and thought it's all taboo and everything, then it's time to look at religion. And if you've been money obsessed and all you've ever cared about is money and it's just always been money, money, money and materialistic stuff, well, it's time to look at spirituality and yourself and your soul. And if you've only considered spirituality and you've only been working on that sort of stuff, well, it's time to start making some money and it's time to start caring a little bit about some money. Because this is what I see in the world right now. It's like, it's happened a lot. I noticed it especially with women, because there's a ton of, I'm now getting more female customers than men because I talk about making money and everything. And what's happened is a lot of the female teachers out there have, they've talked about the warm, fluffy feelings stuff, and they've talked about, being spiritual and making things look pretty and all of this, and there's nothing wrong with doing that at all. But, it's gone to an extreme now where they've got all of these pretty looking websites and they're not making any money. And, it's gone to the extreme now where you've got people out in California doing meditation and yoga and, eating all this healthy food and everything and being really relaxed until they need some money to pay their rent, and then they're totally not relaxed. And you see, this is how it happens. If you choose a side and think the other's wrong, well, you're going to have to face the one that you think is wrong. And the only way to really be wrong is to choose a side. And this is the paradox that binary introduces to us. If we choose a side, then we make the other side, appear. So the real way to do it is to become non-binary and balance the poles. And so whatever way your poles are really, stacked right now, whatever way your scales are stacked, the real way to evolve and to achieve whatever you want is to remove the binary stackings of all of those things, the hard jammed on and off and me and not me and this is right and this is wrong. You need to remove those jams on everything. And this is the new alchemy paradigm and worldview. And here's a pin-up which is available for download below this video, and this one is called the To Be or Not To Be pin-up. And it says here, to be or not to be, that is the question. And the key to all evolution is variation. And when you start to grow tired of what is in the light, you must face what is in the dark. And we must understand that the dualism that exists in our own mind, and lose the binary stance of one true right and one wrong, and one true me and not me. And Shakespeare said, Shakespeare's famous quote is, to be or not to be. That is the question. And I guess he never really figured out that nothing is static and everything in this universe is forever moving, changing, and becoming. The real question is, who am I becoming? That is the question. And so that's a quote from me. You want to print this out and pin it up if this is something you want to remind yourself of, because when we get stuck in the binaries of to be or not to be, and we are someone, then we are not to be the other, it's because we've got stuck on these two things. And we've got stuck here as a society, as people, as everything. And I've been quietly sitting back and watching this stuff happen for quite a long time, waiting for the perfect moment to move on it. And, I watched these paradoxes flip all very recently. And this is why I'm coming out and introducing this new paradigm and new worldview, because the current way of thinking is wrong, and we've gotten ourselves into quite a lot of trouble with it. And so we've got some action items for this video here. So these ones are really awesome, and you're going to thoroughly enjoy completing these ones. This is fun stuff to do. I think this sort of stuff is more fun to do than really anything, because you're discovering who you are, as your identity, and you're discovering that you can pretty much do anything you want, and this stuff's the most fun in the world for me, I think, or it should be for anyone. And so here they are. The first one is to discover your identity and who you are. And we do this thing called the Myers-Briggs Test, and you go to this URL to find the Myers-Briggs Test, and it's consulting.com/MBTI. The link's on the screen, and you can type that in, and I'll show you really quickly right now. You go to consulting.com/MBTI, and it looks like this. Very simple page here. And, this thing is really, really simple, and it's free to do. All you do is you go through and you just choose one of these for each question. And the only way you can mess this up is if you just overthink it. There is no right and wrong answer to this test. That's the big thing. You're not doing an IQ test, and no one's going to say you're smart or you're stupid or anything like that. There is no right and wrong answer to this test. So remove any, belief you've got about it, and just do the test and answer the questions honestly and with the first thing that really comes to mind for each one. And then take note of the result which you get. It'll be a 4-letter word, and you just want to write that down. And so do this test and do it honestly. And that's the first one. And so what I want you to do right now is pause this video and do this action item. Find out what your Myers-Briggs result is, the 4-letter word, write it down. Now the next one is to discover the binary poles of your current programming. So the way you are currently programmed, we want to discover the binary poles that exist there. And so to do that, you want to complete the binary poles worksheet. It's available for download below this video. Or you can download it and then click this link here, and you can open it in Google Docs and complete it in Google Docs, so you've got a digital copy. Or you can print it out and complete it as a PDF. And so the first question is, who are 3 people you idolize, look up to, or admire? So, who are these people? Everyone's got them. Don't be one of those people who's like, I don't have one. Everybody really has these things. So you want to write them down. You want to write 3 down. And then what traits, characteristics, or things do you like about these people? Write them down. And then who are 3 people who you despise, dislike, and think are wrong? Write them down. And I notice when I try to do this one with people, a lot of people are like, there's no one. You've got to be really, really honest with yourself. The only person who you're really going to fool with this is, no one's going to be looking at your answers or anything. So the only person you're going to fool is you. So make sure you write them down. Be honest with it. And then what traits, characteristics, or things do you not like about these 3 people? What things do they do that really piss you off and get you all agitated? Now, what things do you love doing and could happily do every day? What are your favorite things to do that you'd just be having the time of your life if you're just doing them all day? Write them down. And what things do you hate doing? Totally detest. And never want to do ever in your entire life. Write those down. Things which totally suck. Write them down. And question 7. Now you want to circle the one which best describes you for all of the following. So we've got logic and intuition, tight with money and loose with money, masculine and feminine, so on and so forth. You want to go through these and you got to just circle one, whatever one you think best suits you. And take the time to do that for each one. And then question 8, what is your dream? So what do you really want to achieve in life? And how do you want to live? Take a moment to really think about what you really want. What would be everything you'd ever wanted? Where would you want to live? What would you want to do? How much money would you have in your bank account? What car would you have? Just dream. What would you want? What would be totally awesome in everything you'd ever wanted? And now, do you see how your current binary poles are in direct conflict with the dream you have for yourself? Do you see the things that you dislike other people for and judge them by are the exact things you need yourself to achieve your dreams? It's funny how this happens. Because what happens is, whatever side of ourselves which we ignore, whatever side of ourselves which we put into the darkness and bottle up and, hide, after long enough, that side of us wants to come out. That's just the way it exists. And so, for what happened is, for me, I grew up poor, so, I wanted to make a lot of money. But when I was young, my parents had always said that, money is not good and people who are rich are bad people, and that's what society said and everything. So I thought that people who were rich were bad, and I thought that, talking to strangers was bad and all of this stuff. And so I judged a lot of people. If people were rich, and they were talking about money, I would judge them. And then so what happens is, when I judge people who make money, then now I'm too afraid to make money because I might be judged. And so you see, this is how it happens. Often, it's amazing. I've done this with lots of people. I did this with this girl the other day, and she put down, who she really liked, and it was these different people in California who had these different stores, and they would make different colored dresses and stuff, and they lived in the forest, and they lived in nature, and they were really spiritual, and they did meditation and all of this stuff. And so she really liked them. They were who she aspired. But then I said, okay, and which ones do you don't like? Which people do you think are wrong? And she chose Kourtney Kardashian, or whatever that young one's called. And because she was, really bold and standing in front of Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff, and totally different to these very humble people who were living in the forest. And I was like, oh wow, this is fascinating. And then then I asked her what her dream was and everything, and it was to become a famous artist and all of this. And it's she's too scared to become a famous artist because of being judged. It's because she judges the bold one. And so it's fascinating. Whenever you have a jamming of these sides, whenever you have a perception that one is the absolute right way to live and one is the absolute wrong way to live, then you're paralyzed, and you need some of the characteristics and traits that the people who you judge have. And so you freeze yourself, and you end up not being able to do anything. And so you'll notice, if you scroll up here, and if you go to what you've chosen here, all of these different things, and if you look at the people who you like and their characteristics, and the people you don't like and their characteristics, you'll notice that what's necessary to achieve your biggest dream is actually in conflict with your current binaries, which is amazing. And this is what happens every time. And so, I can confidently say this because this happens every single time. There's no way, like, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's like there is no other way these things exist in the perceivable universe. If one thing happens, if there's one extreme on the other, it'll create the other. And this is just how it happens. And so, we need to do this. We need to see that the binaries we currently have are in direct conflict with, who we want to become and who we want to be so that we can, really be happy. And the way you exist at this moment makes it impossible to achieve your dreams. So in the previous mindset videos in week 2, I told you that who you are right now, yourself, you'll never achieve your dreams. Impossible. It's a flat out zero chance game. Because the person who you are right now will not achieve those dreams. To achieve our dreams, we have to become the person who deserves them and who just reaches out and grabs them. And so, we have to become a new person. And the way you exist at this moment makes it impossible to achieve your dreams. Who you are right now will never achieve your dreams. You must evolve to achieve your dreams, and that means facing the dark side of you and removing all the binaries of your mental programming. We've got like this this on off like programming, which we have programmed into our brain from the very beginning of our consciousness, and it's chosen sides for all these different scales and all of these different beliefs, and this forms our self, our identity. This forms our beliefs. And our beliefs and our identity, they form our reality. If we walk around, this is what we see. This is everything. And so this stuff is fundamentally important. And now what you need to do is write below that you are committed to facing these things and achieving your dreams. If you want to achieve your dreams, if you want everything that you've ever wanted, and if you want to become the person who you really want to become, then make a commitment right now. Write it down in your own words. Just say, like, I am committed to achieving my dreams and, facing these binaries which I have. Just write it down. Make a commitment to yourself. And then number 11, judging others makes it impossible to do anything bold yourself because of the fear that you will be judged. It's funny how that one happens, huh? It's like, if anyone is too afraid to do anything because of what others might say or think about them, I'm like, okay, well, thanks for telling me that you have quietly, in your own head, been judging everybody that is doing something. It is so amazing. Like, it's like, I can just see a different thing than everyone else can see because I've been able to evolve my consciousness so much. It's like, if someone says something, I'm like, bam, I know what it is. If someone does something, I'm like, okay, I know what your problem is. And it's just because, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. If someone is too afraid to do something because of something, that means that they're judging others for that thing. It's fascinating, and it's impossible for this thing to not be right because it's the way the whole universe works. And so take a look at the people you disliked and why. And so what you'll understand is, that the reason why you dislike them and the thing you're judging them for, that's the thing that you need to do to achieve what you want to achieve. And so if you want to be free of your fear, then you have to stop judging other people. And so what you want to do right now is make a conscious decision to stop judging them and start loving them by taking the time to understand their point of view and agreeing with it. Let go of everything you're holding on to. So, when I finally became free of the fear of being judged and worrying about what people said about me on the internet or worrying about what someone commented on one of my ads or something, I wasn't free of that fear until I stopped doing it to other people. And so when I stopped doing it to other people, I had no fear at all. I don't care what anyone says about me on the internet at all. I just have zero care in the world. It's awesome because there's no better way to live than without fear of what other people are going to think. And the only way to achieve that state of consciousness is to stop doing it to other people. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So let go of everything you're holding onto. So, I told you a story about how I did this with Andrew Argue. He had this very strong sense of self and who he was, and in order to help him grow as a person and grow his business and his amount of money he was making, we had to start eroding his sense of self. And so he didn't like germs. He was afraid of them. I told him that he needed to drop food on the floor and purposefully put germs on them. He didn't like cat hair in my apartment. I told him to get a cat. And, he was a vegan for 7 years. I told him to start eating meat. And he did. It took a long time. It took about a year to get through all of these different things, all of these different binaries, which I had to break. But by the time he had broken all of the binaries, he went from making $17,000 a month to $400,000 a month. And it's not just about the money. He is so much happier, so much more relaxed, so much healthier, so much everything. Because, he was hard jammed on all of these different sides. And growing up, because I was in a poor family, and my parents always said, people who have money, are evil or wrong, or they're doing bad things, and that they should give their money to the poor, and they should give money to charity. I grew up thinking that those people were bad. And so if ever I saw a rich person or something, I was like, oh, that guy's bad. Or if ever I saw a movie with a rich guy, I was like, that guy's bad. And, then if there was ever a president, like someone like Donald Trump, I'd think, oh, that guy's bad, because he's about money, bad. And so, that's just the way I was programmed. And so then I went into business, and I tried to make money, and what do you think happened? I couldn't make any money. I couldn't ask anyone for money, because I couldn't even ask, because I thought that was like a sin. And so here we go. I'm now screwed. I believe that making money is bad, so I can't make any money because I'm scared that it's bad, right? So this was the first one I had to face. I had to remove this binary I had of it. And, then what I did is I jammed it a bit too far the other way. I went and jammed it a bit too far in, making money is everything, and jammed it the other way of how I used to have it. And so then I thought that making money was the only thing that was important, and anything else was not important at all. And then I got jammed again. And so then I got jammed on the other side. And if I saw a president like Donald Trump, I'd think, that guy is everything. And, so now I'm on the opposite side of the binary. And I fell into another trap, and I got stuck again. And then I had to really realize, I had to understand all of this, and it took me so long to understand. I can't tell you how many thousands of books and everything I've read to understand this. Words can't even describe. But I was able to figure out what everything that inside my own consciousness and the universe and everything, and I was able to understand what I had done wrong and how it was the jamming of these binaries. And so then, I had to become pretty much neutral. I had to see both points of view, and I had to understand that the only way you could really get it wrong was to get stuck on one of the sides. And, sitting pretty much perfectly in the middle is the right way to be. And so most people, they're jammed a bit far left or a bit far right on all sorts of different things. And, you need to bring them into balance, really, to be able to make progress and evolve and move forward. And you really need to let go of everything you're holding on to. So this is I know for a lot of people who, a lot of women who are into spirituality and everything, and who are into meditation and yoga and all of that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it becomes a problem when they think that that's the right way to live, and that making money and being in the city is the wrong way to live. and that's how it's gotten jammed these days. The people in California who are meditating and eating healthy food and wearing yoga pants and doing all of that, they believe that people like me sitting in a skyscraper in Manhattan making money and talking about making money, they believe that I'm living the wrong way. And what's fascinating is they actually say that on my Facebook page. They're like, oh, shame on you, you should be at the beach and being relaxed and everything. I'm like, well, geez, she can't be that happy if she's actually coming after me, like trying to say that the way I live is wrong. Really saying the way anyone's living is wrong is that's the only wrong you can really do. And so I know that a lot of women who have ignored making money and charging for stuff and this whole topic of money, it's been turned into like a taboo topic and it's been put in the dark side. And a lot of women need to get a bit greedier. Really, they need to start making some money, because there is no point in, we can't ignore one thing, because eventually if we do ignore it, we're going to need it. And so if you want to become happy and spiritual and peaceful and everything, and you go off and you totally forget about money and just obsess over that stuff, you're eventually going to end up needing money. And if you go on to the other side and all you obsess about is money and you forget about everything else, well, all of a sudden you're going to realize that there's more to life than money. And it's, you're just going to keep experiencing the paradox, and you're going to keep flipping between these two things until you figure this out. And so, a good one to flip for a lot of people, and is Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of people that think Trump is the most evil person in the world, and there's a lot of people that think Hillary Clinton is the most evil person in the world. There really is there is people who think these different things. I mean, the only way you can really be wrong is by thinking that there is one is absolutely right and the other is absolutely wrong. I mean, if you have a binary pole on one of those things, it's probably an indication of, that you're kind of stuck on one side on a lot of things. And so, throughout my entire life, I've had these different things, and, I started to learn that both of them, both people have a point. Both people say a lot of stuff that is absolutely true. Both people say a lot of things which need addressing, and both people have issues too. Both people have things that are wrong, and they both have things that are right. And so, you have to acknowledge that. And the only way you can really get it wrong is by absolutely judging and victimizing one and then absolutely believing the other is perfectly fine. Like, that's what binary thinking is. That's what binary logic is, and that's when we jam the things. And so, if you've been an avid Trump supporter, you should take a look at, the things that Hillary is saying. And if you've been an avid Hillary supporter, you should take a look at the things Trump's saying. I'm not telling you that you have to believe one or the other. And if you want to know my stance on it, I don't have one at all. Absolutely zero. And I can't vote anyway because I'm not a US citizen. So I don't have a stance on it at all, and I don't judge anyone that does. So that's my answer. But I'm not forcing you to believe one or the other. I'm just saying you need to understand both points of view, because it's the way it's the way that you evolve yourself. And it's like, if you think that you're an introvert and you can never do anything extroverted, well, that's the only wrong way to think. Introverts can become extroverts. They can turn it on and turn it off. And extroverts can become introverts. The only way an introvert is wrong is if they refuse to ever be an extrovert. And the only way an extrovert can be wrong is if they refuse to ever be an introvert. And so I learned, I grew up as an introvert. But then I went into business and I pretty much figured out immediately that I had to talk to people and do some things which pushed me outside my comfort zone. And so I can flip between introvert and extrovert. I can turn it on and turn it off. I can flip between all of the different things. I'm like a chameleon. I can just flick between any different one I want depending on what I need to do. I do have one which I prefer, but I absolutely flip through all of these different things to get different things done and achieve what I want to achieve. And because if you're always out as an extrovert talking about stuff, well, you really need to reflect a little bit and take some time to think and take some some alone quiet time. And if you're an introvert, you need to get yourself out there a bit more. The only way you can really get it wrong is by choosing a side and thinking that's it. And what are some of the things that you dislike and would never do? So think about some things which you would never do in a million years that you're totally afraid of. And list 3 to 4 of them that you can do this week. So list 3 to 4 of them down here below which you can do this week. And then list one thing that you would never do, but you're going to do right now. So something simple. Like if you've never eaten meat, write down I'm going to go eat a pie. Write down you're going to go eat a burger. That might be a bit too extreme for you to do right away. It took me about 14 months to make Andrew argue do that. If you had asked him in the beginning that would he do that, he would have bet you $1 million that he would never do that in his entire life. But then he did it. And, he understands now how this stuff is important. You might be thinking, Sam, what on earth are you doing? Like, what has this got to do with making money? And this has more to do with making money than you can possibly imagine. Because, in order to make money, we have to become someone who we are not. We have to acquire the skills which we don't have. We have to evolve. And in order to evolve, we need to, to do these things, to become our new self and let go of the old self. And so write down one thing you would never do but are going to do right now. Write it down, and then pause this video right now, and then do it. Actually do it, and then tick it off. So I did it. Now, question 13, what 4-letter result did you get for the Myers-Briggs test? So consulting.com/MBTI, do the test, and then what did you get? Should be 4 letters. Write it down. Write it down here. And then the opposite of each type for Myers-Briggs is below. And here they are. So in Myers-Briggs, I love it because it's designed perfectly to figure out what way your programming is. It's, a lot of people, this is why scientists have gotten a bit mad, is because science rejects Myers-Briggs because people get different results over time. And so scientists and all of their intelligence together, they say that Myers-Briggs therefore isn't an accurate test. And I'm like, oh my God, you scientists that dumb? Is all of scientists that silly now? All right, well, the reason why they get different results is because people actually change. And, in an experiment, you need a constant and a variable, and scientists are so smart that they consider people constants. And I don't know if you've ever noticed people and observed their behavior and how they change over time, but they are certainly not a constant. And so, forget all of that stuff that science said about it, because science has gone and gotten a bit crazy. And so this reason why people get different results at different times is because people do change. And, people can change depending on different circumstances, depending on all sorts of different stuff. And what you want to do is you want to do this test now because you can identify, how you're currently programmed right now. And it's going to give you these 4 different letters, and there's 2 options for each letter. So you can have an I or an E, and then that's the first letter. And then you can have an N or an S, that's the second letter. Then you can have an F or a T, and that's the third letter. Then you can have a P or a J, and that's the 4th letter. And the combination of these 4 things builds up your what your thing is. And so, you could be an ESTJ or an INFP. There's all of these different things. And so I think there's 16 in total, 16 different possibilities. None of them are right or wrong. It just shows you how you're currently programmed. And so if you've got an I, that means you're introverted and you're quiet and reserved. And then if you've got an E, that means that you're extroverted and loud and outgoing. And if you get an N, N, it means you're intuitive. It means you use your intuition a lot. You kind of just, you use intuition. That means you don't really use logic. You kind of just, you know what to do. And you're random, and you don't really have rules. Like, you don't like rules, and you do a lot of stuff at random, unstructured. And S, that means you really love structure. You're really organized, you plan out your whole day and everything, and you like things being predictable, and you're always on time, and you love rules. And so you're either an N or an S, or an I or an E, and then you've got an F and a T. And an F is a feeling and emotion. That means that you tend to make decisions a lot with how you feel. So you kind of feel what's in your body, and then you kind of make a decision. And T is when you use thinking, logic, and reason, and rationale. You're very rational. That's when you use T. And generally men are more T than women, and generally women are more F. And that's kind of because the energy of feminine is more intuitive and emotional, and the energy of men is more rational and logical, and so that's how it goes. And then there's P, and then there's J. And P is when you're perceiving and you're quite indecisive. You like to keep your options open, and you like to not really make a decision. And J is when you are very decisive. Everything's black and white. You're very decisive. And so, these are the different letters which you can have. And you want to take note of what yours is. Write it down here in question 13. And then in question 14, you want to identify your opposites and see how you're going to need them to achieve your goals. So if you're an ESTJ, then you're going to circle INFP, because those are your opposites. So go through these different letters and circle your opposites of what you are. So if you're an E, select an I, or if you're an F, select a T. And what you need to understand is that, people, this is how people got Myers-Briggs wrong. People thought that when you did this test and you found out your result, that you were stuck being what it was, and they thought, oh, this is me, and that's it. Oh no, I'm introverted. That means I can't be extroverted. Oh, that's a shame. I'm not joking. Everyone in the whole world believes this is how Myers-Briggs works, and that's totally wrong. It's just the way you're currently programmed, and you can change it. You can totally change it. If you're an INFP, you can become an ESTJ. If you're an ESTJ, you can become an INFP. You can totally do whatever you want. And so, because remember, it's not who am I, it's who am I becoming, right? And so this just identifies who you are, so that you can now identify what you need to change to become who you want to become, all right? Real simple. So when we identify the opposites, we can see which ones we're going to need to achieve our goals. If you're an introvert, chances are you're going to have to get a little bit more extroverted. And if you're really intuitive and random, you're probably going to need to get a bit more structured. And if you're really structured, you're probably going to need to get a little bit more intuitive and random. And if you're extroverted, you're probably going to need to get a bit more introverted. And if you're really emotional, you're going to need to use more logic. A lot of females, a lot of women, they are far too intuitive, and they end up like not having any money and being all stressed out and worried and everything. And there's nothing wrong with intuition and being really intuitive, except when you only use intuition and never logic. And so that's how you can get yourself into trouble. And so I know a lot of women, they need to start using some more logic. Not, they don't need to completely forget intuition, because there's a lot of men, and this was me too, I went way too far on the logic. I thought everything had to have logic and reason and rationale, and I was a logical, mastermind. I could do everything in logic, but logic can only get you so far. Logic is far from perfect. Logic without logic can take you so far, but then you need intuition to make the final call on it. And so this is what it is. Like if you're an F, then you probably need a bit of T. If you're a T, you probably need a bit of F. And if you are, a P, then you probably need a bit of J, and if you're a J, you probably need a bit of P. And so this is how it works. And what I'm telling you here is not what other people tell you about Myers-Briggs. So don't be surprised if everywhere else on the internet and every other person on the internet says that something totally different, because the world's gotten confused, right? Everyone else is saying that's who you are, and it's okay. This is who you are. Forget about it all. Like, just make the most of your strengths and everything, and forget about it. But seriously, we aren't anybody. We are only becoming someone. And so this is just how we're currently programmed right now. And so, you can forget about what everyone else says about this test in the entire world, because I'm telling you this is actually how it was all created and everything. And I had to go back to Carl Jung way back through history, and really study the man and understand everything to actually understand how this was created in the first place. And our current perception in society of how this test works and everything is wrong. It's, imagine Carl Jung way back in history playing Chinese whispers throughout, however many years. I'm sure you've played Chinese whispers before. Like, the message gets distorted. Over like 50 to 100 years or something, information gets distorted. And so, this is really the way the Myers-Briggs test is supposed to be done and it's supposed to work and everything. And so you want to identify your opposites, and then you will be, you want to try to introduce more of your opposites into your life and business, and be aware that problems will exist due to these things being too binary and jammed on one side. So there's nothing wrong with being an introvert, only when you are too nervous to speak that you're unhappy because you can't speak. And there's nothing wrong with being an extrovert until all you do is speak and you don't seem to really ever think about why you're always speaking all the time, right? And so that's my point here. It's, there needs to be a balance between these different things, and a problem in your life. And when you become paralyzed in any area of your life, it's typically when one of these is overdeveloped and become a really jammed binary pole or position on something. And so that's how this is supposed to work. And so what I want you to do is complete those 2 action items, and then upload them in the action items section of this week. So, scroll down, just click on action items, complete them, and then upload them. Make sure you upload your action items. So we've got, so you've got them saved and stored somewhere. Because seriously, people forget stuff all the time. If there's one thing that you've learned through going through this training and learning about your mind, it's that your memory sucks. And so do the work, do it now, because if you say you're going to do it later, you're not. If you say you'll do it tomorrow, you won't. Do it now and save it, and then upload it in the action items section. And then the third one is really easy, fun exercise to start evolving yourself. Do something which you wouldn't usually do. So if you only listen to rap music, listen to some rock music. If you only listen to rock music, try listening to some rap. And if you only listen to dance, try listening to some Mozart. If you only listen to Mozart, try listening to like some drum and bass or something. And if you've always had your hair cut a certain way, well, change it. If you've always worn the same thing, or if you've always had the same style or fashion sense or whatever, change it. And, you want to, if you've always been someone who goes to bed super early and wakes up really early, try staying up a bit later. And if you've only ever eaten one type of food, try eating something else. If you've been a religious breakfast person and eaten breakfast every day for the last 10 years, try skipping it. We come to believe that there's this one best way to live, and there isn't. The only wrong way to do anything is to just believe that it is right and not change. Because a lack of variation in evolution causes all issues. A lack of variation in evolution causes inbred species, it causes diseases, it causes, it causes everything wrong. The key to evolution is variation. And so, when I really figured all of this stuff out, I decided, man, this is fun, because I started to eat dessert before dinner. I'm not even joking you. Like, don't even think like, oh, Sam's just telling us something extreme, like to make us laugh or something. I'm not kidding. I would eat dessert first and then eat dinner, because who said that it couldn't go the other way around? And sometimes I'd eat dessert for lunch. I'd eat like a cookie and just a whole bunch of ice cream on top of it for lunch. I was just like, well, screw it, why not? And then I decided to start working at night and sleeping during the day. For a good 6 months, and you can ask anyone in my mastermind about this, I would wake up at about 3 p.m. in the day and then be working all through the night. And I just, because I was like, well, I'm going to try it out. Why not? Like, there's no one's saying, it's not really, no one can really say that's the wrong thing to do. I mean, I'm just going to try it out and see what it's like. And through doing these different things, you're able to evolve yourself. You're able to show yourself that, you're not hard-wired and hard-jammed on one particular thing. Like, I used to be an introvert and I was paralyzed because I couldn't do anything outgoing. I had to learn how to do stuff that was outgoing. And, I used to be hard-jammed on logic. I had to develop some intuition. And you need to do these things. You need to start evolving yourself. Just like, eating dessert before dinner. That's a fun one to do. You really should do it. And, even for a while, for about a month, I decided to become a vegetarian, because I figured, I've never really tried that. So I decided I want to try it out. But I also didn't want to become a vegetarian only because, the only way you can really get any of this stuff wrong is if you get hard jammed on one side. And, I also do, meditation, and I take, myself and my wellness and everything very seriously, but I also take making money very seriously. When I only cared about money, I ended up, in a bad place. And if you only care about wellness, then you end up being in a bad place. And so you need to have a balance of these two things. And so a lot of women and a lot of spirituality people out there, it's going to be awesome, because I want you to print out a picture of like Gordon Gekko, who's that dude off Wall Street, who's smoking the cigar, and he's like, greed is good and everything. Like, that is probably the enemy of everyone who is in California and does yoga and meditation and everything. Like, here's a dude who smokes cigars and he says greed is good, and he's in the movie Wall Street. He is the personification of the opposite of what people like to do in California. And so, print off a picture of him and put him on your desk and think, I need to be a bit more like that guy. Because, if you're not making any money and you're struggling and you're sad, and the only thing that's kind of dawning on your mind all the time is that you need money, well, you've let things get out of balance. I'm not saying to become money obsessed. I'm saying you need to make some money. And if you've been money obsessed, print out a picture of like someone doing meditation or Buddha or something, and because that's pretty much the opposite of that. And you want to become a little bit more aware and everything like that, because the only way you can get things wrong is by choosing a side. And this is a very, very powerful and very, very transformative way to achieve what you want, and not only with money, not only with business, but with your entire life. This stuff I'm showing you isn't just about how to get rich quick. It's about how to have an amazing life at the same time. And no one else is talking about anything like this stuff. So, don't be surprised if what I'm talking about totally you've never heard of before, or totally no one else is talking about. Because, like I said, this is revolutionary new stuff. I've been waiting for the right time until these paradoxes flipped to introduce this new paradigm and this new worldview and this new way of thinking. And right now, this is the perfect time for this. And, this is this new revolution which is going on. This is going to set off the new revolution. And so, ignoring this information and everything, you'll end up in a bad place. This is what you need to adopt if you want to thrive and do well in this new revolution which is happening throughout the world right now. So very powerful information. Complete these different exercises, upload them to the action items section in the training, and then I will see you in the next video. Thanks.